Sorry, I'm sure I wrote something down that's a little more... Hi, I'm Marty Yang. I'm a postdoc in Vijay Ramani's lab at the Gladstone Institutes. Towards the end of my PhD, I was working on how genetic variation impacts gene regulation, and I was sort of stuck at a crossroads where I felt like a lot of the questions I wanted to address were sort of limited by technological advances. And that's partly how I stumbled upon Vijay's lab when he was a fellow, and also more recently as a PI at the Gladstone. I was really inspired by some of the work he'd done and his lab had done, developing new single molecule technologies for sequencing our genomes. And I thought that it would be really cool to apply some of the methods he's used as a postdoc in my own sort of field of understanding how genes regulate brain development. So one thing that really struck me when I started working here at the Gladstone is simply how collegial and collaborative everyone is, both within my lab and also within the Gladstone Institute more broadly. When I'd gotten here, I wasn't entirely sure exactly the direction I wanted my projects to take, and I found that all my discussions with, both, as I mentioned, my lab mates, but also folks from other labs have been really insightful and quite frankly also very incisive as well in terms of the questions they've asked, and those have really guided a lot of the research that I'm currently partaking in. I wasn't necessarily interested in science per se. I actually recently went back home and looked at an old yearbook, and where the question was for the year was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of folks mentioned want to be firefighters, doctors, but I actually mentioned that I wanted to be a math professor. So I wasn't necessarily like enamored with science per se, but I definitely wanted, or was curious at the time about learning about the world from a quantitative standpoint. So I would say that I'd always had sort of science and math on my mind. The human genome, if we extend it all the way outwards, stretches about 2 meters in length. And of course, each one of our cells has a nucleus within it that's approximately 10 microns in size. So our genomes need to be massively compacted to be able to fit into such a small space. So the research that I do in Vijay Ramani's lab is we try and develop new technologies to understand how our genomes are compacted and structured. And in particular, we think that the structure is not only important for compaction, but also for enabling the different cell types within our body to emerge from the same genetic blueprint. So for instance, neurons in our brain, say in comparison with hepatocytes that we find in our livers. And in particular, the project that we've worked on most recently is trying to understand how the structure might change when a fundamental cellular process occurs, which is cell division and the DNA replication as well. So we want to understand how the cellular machinery that interacts with our genomes are altered by this process of duplicating our DNA within each of our dividing cells. Recently, me and my partner have actually gotten a puppy, a mini golden doodle. His name's Charlie. We sometimes take him over around San Francisco, and we really enjoy taking him out for walks, playing with other dogs at dog parks. So he's really become a central part of my life in the recent past. So in the long run, I do want to become a professor, investigator, running a lab for a couple of reasons. One of which is I think that I'm still really inspired by doing basic science and sort of doing it in as creative a manner as possible. And I think that being a PI in academia allows that sort of freedom to be able to really pursue the basic science questions that I think are most pressing. And the second is, of course, I really do value mentorship, and that's an avenue that Gladstone has allowed me to do a fair bit of so far in my postdoc. I find the opportunity to mentor younger scientists who are sort of on their trajectory upwards incredibly rewarding, and I definitely want that to be a part of my career going forward. Yeah, so I was lucky as a graduate student to have a couple really fantastic mentors who both gave me the freedom to think really critically about my own problems, but would also provide me support both in terms of the science, but also with making career decisions as well. So I like to, in my own in my own career, be able to reciprocate that sort of relationship with others. So I've been really lucky so far at the Gladstone to have worked with a number of the core facilities here who have been really exceptional and be able to sort of advance my project in areas that I haven't been totally familiar with. And I'll mention as well that the grants office here at the Gladstone has been really supportive as well, as I've applied for a number of fellowships. They've really gone above and beyond in terms of not only helping me get the application submitted, but have also really provided some invaluable feedback as well along the way that's really been helpful.